Hi everybody, I'm back, and this is lecture number 6, The Enlightenment in Europe. Welcome to your final lecture for this unit. Whew! Almost done. I know, right? Yeah, well at this point we have covered many topics, including how strong monarchs emerged across Europe. We learned that many monarchs were absolute monarchs and ruled using the theory of divine right. You should really know that at this point, and if you don't, you need to go back and listen to the first lectures again. Thanks. All right, we have also learned that England was different and eventually limited the power of their king by creating a constitutional monarchy, or a limited monarchy. During the last lecture, I discussed the scientific revolution and how traditional views about the world were changing and often came into conflict with the church. Well, today we are going to learn about how all of these things led to a social and political revolution across Europe. It was though an enormous light bulb went off, and people's views of society and political structures began to change. This period of time is referred now to as the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment. Yeah, it does sound like a light bulb to me. Ding, flip, on come the lights. Wake up, people! All right, that was dumb. But the Enlightenment is defined as an intellectual movement that focused on reason and thought and the power of individuals to solve problems in society. It took place following the scientific revolution in the 1700s. The Enlightenment is often called the Age of Reason. Two individuals are given credit for ushering in the Enlightenment. Call them the fathers of the Enlightenment. You know, they both had very different notions of how government should be led. They were John Locke and Thomas Hobbes. So look at your word list to spell those. Okay, so let's talk about Thomas Hobbes first. All right, Hobbes wrote a famous book called The Leviathan. Look it up on your word list. A Leviathan is an imaginary, scary sea monster or sea creature. Whoa, why is this guy writing about sea monsters? I thought he was into politics. Yeah, well, Hobbes believed that men were naturally evil, selfish, and wicked. He said that people need governments to prevent them from acting this way. Hobbes believed that people need a strong leader, like a king, telling them what to do. Hobbes felt that people formed a social contract with their government by handing over their rights to a sea monster. To an ever-powerful king, like an absolute monarch. Hobbes believed that a strong ruler could create order in society and demand obedience. Another philosopher, John Locke, he disagreed with that theory. John Locke argued that people weren't evil, per se, they just needed to learn from experience to improve their lives and political systems. John Locke argued that all men possess natural rights, meaning certain inalienable rights that can't be taken away by anyone, including by a ruler like an absolute monarch. Locke argued for self-government and basically stated that, hey, if you aren't happy with how you're being ruled by a certain leader, have a revolution and overthrow that leader, and hey, put someone in power who will respect your natural rights. Now, you can imagine that Hobbes might have been popular with kings and queens based on his views. Locke, not so much. Why? Well, hello! Locke was arguing to get rid of absolute monarchies. Both philosophers, it should be noted, were from the English Civil War period, and these events in England certainly helped them develop these opposing viewpoints. But both Hobbes and Locke did help to usher in an era of questioning authority. Other notable philosophers from the Enlightenment include a group of people in France called the philosophes. Philosophe. You know, don't worry about this word, philosophe. It sounds all French and stuff. That's because it is. Philosophe is simply the plural word in French for philosopher or lover of wisdom. Philosophes were interested in the following, so write these down. First of all, these people were using reason to figure out social problems. Secondly, they believed that, hey, everything in the natural world can give us answers. Ooh, waterfalls are like people. Yeah, so the natural world can give us answers. Thirdly, don't worry, be happy. Oh, I was supposed to sing that like Bobby McFerrin, but it didn't really work out. I won't do it now. I'll, spare you. Yeah, basically, philosophes argued that you gotta live in the now in the secular world, and don't just try to get to heaven all the time. Enjoy life while you're here. All right, the fourth thing that philosophers argued was progress. Philosophers were optimistic about the human condition and believed that all societies could change. And finally, the fifth thing, liberty. French philosophers were inspired by what had happened in England, with their limited monarchy, and they wanted to see similar things happen in France to their own monarchy. Yeah, consequently, many philosophers were not exactly welcomed to Versailles with open arms for speaking out against the king. Some of the philosophers got themselves into a little bit of trouble for this, including a philosopher named Voltaire. Voltaire argued that power comes from a tip of a pen, not a sword. These are fighting words, Mr. Voltaire. Yeah, basically, Voltaire wrote quite a bit of satire. Think of him as the Jon Stewart show or the Colbert Report of the Enlightenment. He was snarky, witty, smart, and he made fun of the monarch constantly. He was an avid supporter of freedom of speech. He once said, quote, "I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the end your right to say it," end quote. Voltaire spent some time in prison, of course, for his beliefs, and he was also exiled to England even. Other philosophers include Montesquieu. Let's say that again, Montesquieu.
What's happening? Where am I?
Sacre bleu! What a foolish question! You are at West Springfield Elementary School!
West Springfield? I'm at the wrong school!
En français!
Ever heard of separation of powers into the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government? Yeah, the whole idea that no one person or group of people should have all the power in society, that was Montesquieu. Power should be a check to power, he stated. Another philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, argued that men had become corrupted by governments and should focus on the natural world instead. Quote, "Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains," end quote. This was a quote by Rousseau. Rousseau called for government by the people, or a direct democracy. Legitimate rule came from the consent of the governed, he believed. So remember back to too legit to quit, hey, instead of getting his power from...
I used to be legit. In fact, I was too legit. I was too legit to quit. But now, I'm not legit. I'm unlegit. And for that reason, I must quit.
Pope, Rousseau would have argued that people or leaders get their power from the people. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little off here today. Yeah, Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau, they should really sound strangely familiar. Yeah, they sound like the stuff found in the preamble of our Constitution. Because, yes, hello, Thomas Jefferson loved their theories, and he copied them all. So, totally plagiarized. Whatever. Sorry, Thomas, but you did. So, one can easily say that the U.S. Constitution was born from the Enlightenment ideals. Yes. Okay, so other Enlightenment thinkers, or enlightened thinkers, suggested reforms to prisons and justice systems, sort of like one of the guys from the Enlightenment named Beccaria. He was from Italy. There were also female enlightened thinkers like Mary Wollstonecraft. She wrote a book called The Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792. Her ideas helped influence progressive women's rights activists right here in Rochester, New York, including Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, amongst others. The legacy of these enlightened thinkers, wow, it's pretty intense. We're going to see more and more people embracing the ideas from the Enlightenment, and it's going to result in social progress. We're going to begin to see a more secular outlook on the world, and people will begin to see the importance of individuals and their ability to enact social change. Finally, the Enlightenment ideas will spread across Europe, first via salon culture or salon culture, where philosophers would sit around their friends' living rooms or salons, and they'd have these meetings or debates and discussions about the meaning of life and all that. No, they were not using banned substances. I know it sounds kind of weird, but eventually people will publish their ideas in books, like the philosopher named Diderot, who wrote about Enlightenment ideals in his encyclopedias, which contained works by many philosophers and political thinkers. As ideas about society and government spread, we're also going to begin to see a new form of art emerging across Europe. A new style of art called neoclassical will emerge. This neoclassical style, in which artists borrowed ideas from ancient Greece and Rome, hey, we're all a little Greek and Roman, yo, remember? Anyway, they're going to borrow these things from the Greco-Roman cultures. New classical styles were simple yet elegant in nature. We're also going to see a new style of music during this time period called Baroque music. Baroque music became popular by people like Handel, Mozart, and Beethoven. Okay, so finally, how did kings and queens feel about all this social change? Yeah, well, most of them hated them, okay? Not the art and music part, of course, but the part that said it was okay to get rid of your king, yeah, not so much. So most absolute monarchs felt pretty threatened by these ideas. However, some monarchs in Europe actually embraced the change, including Frederick the Great of Prussia, remember him? And Maria Theresa's dad, Joseph II of Austria. A Russian monarch who was super progressive was Catherine the Great. Catherine passed many reforms in Russia. She expanded her empire, and she gave the serfs, the peasants, many rights. Well, at least until they rebelled, and then she crushed them. All of these leaders became collectively known as enlightened despots, or absolute monarchs light, or diet absolute monarchs, what have you. Enlightenment ideas forever changed Europe socially and politically, and it was this period that will result in an age of political revolutions, including the death of the King of France and his pretty wife. But more on that later.